Welcome to the R&J Yarn podcast. We love to interview innovators and big contributors in our society. And so, Jimmy, it's great to be sitting here with you post Oz Open. And I think I may have done a little bit better than you did with the tips.
Yeah, morning, Ron. Firstly, before we get into the tips, what a final. Medvedev, Nadal, and I'll admit that I like Medvedev going into that game, and 2 sets up, I thought I was on the money, but Nadal, what a fighter, and never count out a champion, as they say.
Yeah, he's there. He's won 21 slams for a reason. Just has that unbelievable agility. It was hard not to watch really when you kind of got into it. It was an incredible match. I recommend watching the highlights if you haven't seen it.
But getting back to the tips, it is true that you were on the money there, Ron, and provided good value, I thought, to the listeners as well, because some of your selections, were they weren't the favourites, and Yannick Sinner, he played really well, and I think he's one for the future.
Yeah.
And Swiatek was also, she was good. She sort of she made the semis. Well, my selections were a little bit underwhelming. Zverev, of course, got bundled out early, and Halep, I think, was fairly early out, and then of course De Minaur was, he was knocked out by Sinner fairly comprehensively, I have to admit.
So I know, at the end of the day, though, it was kind of a tie. So what's going to happen with the lime blue coffee? We just swap bags, or?
No, I think you get the coffee, Ron. I think.
Well, you had Barty.
I did have Barty, but then remember I didn't allow you to select Medvedev, even though that, of course, would have backfired if you had picked Medvedev.
I still would have. Nadal was my second pick, mind you. My first pick was actually Sinner, and he was my second. So I would have had Nadal and Medvedev if I had picked him.
Well, I think what we'll do is we'll call one of them a tie, being the women's comp, and we'll say that you won the men's. And so we'll give you a bag of lime blue coffee.
We'll see what the listeners think. They can say.
Yeah. Okay. We'll see what the social media says. But otherwise, I think one 400-gram bag is very doable.
Yeah, absolutely. And so today, who have we got?
Yeah, well, I'm obviously super excited about today's episode. I've read our guest's mother's book, which was all about her experiences as a horse racing trainer. But obviously, we're interviewing Tom Waterhouse. Now, the thing is, Tom is such a multifaceted guy, and he's a former bookmaker. He's currently running his own venture capital fund. He runs a tipping service for horse racing and sports betting, which is very good. He's part of a wonderful family that's involved in sort of racing and fashion and entrepreneurial activities with his mother, Gay, his dad, Rob, and his sister, Kate. And he's married to Hoda, and he's the father of their 3 children. And there's a lot to him, and I think we really touch on all the aspects in this interview.
And he also picked the Oz Open winners, didn't he?
He did.
He outdid me and Jimmy, so maybe we should be sending him the coffee.
Yeah, very true, very true.
But yeah, so I mean, and the last thing I just wanted to say is, huge thanks to Tom for joining us. He was over in the UK while we interviewed him. But yeah, I hope everyone loves the episode like we did. We really enjoyed catching up with him.
Okay, so let's hear from Tom, and me and you will have a good yarn afterwards.
Yeah, sounds good, mate. Welcome to episode 11 of the R&J Yarn, a podcast interviewing innovators in our society to find out what made them become the person they are today. And today's guest is Tom Waterhouse. Tom is perhaps best known for his involvement in the horse racing industry, but I like to think of Tom as the most innovative Waterhouse, bringing his family name into the tech space in the 2010s, and more recently launching an investment fund on the ASX. So Tom, a warm welcome to the R&J Yarn. How are you travelling today?
Hey Ron, hey Jimmy. Yeah, really good, really good. I'm in the UK at the moment, and it's cold and gloomy, but a lot of fun. And yeah, but I'm definitely missing the Sydney and Melbourne summer. That's for sure.
Okay, sounds great. Sounds great, Tom. Now, I know you're a bit of a tipster, so we're going to kick off with just a couple of tough ones. Who's your pick to win the men's and women's Australian Open?
Oh, Ash Barty in the women's. And look, I just hope Nadal, because I've been a fan of him for a long time. But yeah, I think yeah, I'm going for him rather than necessarily thinking he's good value.
Okay, sounds great. Now, I know that you mentioned it just before, but you did live in Melbourne for a few years. You're living up in Sydney these days. Ron and I are from Melbourne. Can you tell us what was your favourite thing about living in Melbourne?
Well, I didn't really, even though I was in Melbourne 4 years, I didn't really live a true, like a true Melbourne life. I was in Crown for 4 years, and I feel ashamed saying this, but I barely left the complex. I just, I literally, just it sort of for that time of my life, it had everything I needed. So I saw a lot of Crown and loved it. But I got to like a few football matches, and obviously went to all like the Grand Prix and the tennis and all that sort of stuff. But I just loved the thing that I loved the sporting. I loved the city. I loved how everything was so close. People were very warm, very welcoming. Like coming from Sydney, not really knowing that many people, they were always inviting over for dinners and out, and it was just I really enjoyed it. We would have stayed. Uh, we were in no rush to go back home, but my wife, we got married and then was going to have a baby, and her family and my family, they're both in Sydney, and so we moved back, and that was the end of living in a casino.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Next one, Tom. I know you've travelled very widely with horse racing. You actually you take groups of people over to the UK to events and things. What would be your favourite horse racing event or carnival to attend?
Oh, I love going to Royal Ascot. It's just so much fun. It's a great time to be in London during the summer, and I like all the like top hat and tails and the London nightlife and restaurants and the fact the races don't start till 2:30 in the afternoon. It's sort of real gentleman's hours. So I just think it's a great meeting and a lot of fun.
Okay, I have to add that to the bucket list. Now, next one, Tom, is a lot of people. Now, the podcast isn't about betting per se, but we've got to cover it. I think we've got to give the listeners some value. And a lot of punters have little golden rules. It might be pikey in the last. It might be grey horses in the wet. It might be blinkers on first time. Is there any little golden rule that you like to follow?
I just never chase your losses. It's yeah, I stick to a formula, stick to a process, be very clear with your staking, and yeah, never chase your loss. And I guess also if you've got something marked a short price and you're getting a very long price, you see a lot of people reducing their bet. Where I like to go the opposite way. If I've got something marked very short or really like something, and the bigger the price is, the more you want to put on it. So you really want to limit your losses and unlimit your wins.
Okay, sounds great. Last of our quick fire questions, Tom. Let's say you're back in Sydney, Sunday morning, the kids are up, and where would you be heading for a nice Sunday brunch with the family in Sydney? What's your recommendation?
So we have nippers. We have nippers every Sunday morning, and then we come back and we do a big cook. Like maybe it's just like steaks and sausages, and wife does a few salads, and that's basically every Sunday for us. But if we do head out, we go like Italian, like Fratelli Paradiso in Potts Point, and or maybe occasionally some Chinese and yeah, Mr. Wong's or something like that. But yeah, most of the time it's steaks and sausages.
Nice, Tom. So we want to talk a bit about what you're up to these days. So let's talk about Waterhouse VC.com. Like a lot of listeners will know you through bookmaking and horse selection services, or just the horse racing industry generally. But in fact, you've started something quite different. So what sort of prompted you to start the VC business?
So we sold TomWaterhouse.com to William Hill, and then William Hill bought a few businesses here in Australia, Centrebet, Sportingbet, and the TomWaterhouse.com business. Ran those businesses in Australia for them for 4 years, and then bought back TomWaterhouse.com, but on the condition not to go into betting again. So I would have naturally gone and probably been a bookie again or run an online betting business. And that sort of 2 years of non-compete gave me time to think about, well, what else to look at. And we started a tipping business and odds aggregator business, but spent a lot of time thinking about what type of businesses would we want to invest into in the space. And we thought with the US opening up, there was this, it's quite easy to understand a Tabcorp or a Caesars or an MGM or a Flutter, because those businesses are very similar. They've got a certain amount of turnover, you have to spend a certain amount of marketing, a certain amount of product and IT. You've got the same lines of the P&L. And we thought we had no edge in being able to understand whether Tabcorp or PointsBet or a Caesars is more value. But we thought we had a big advantage having run William Hill and being in the space for a long period of time, is what type of products these bookmakers would want, and investing in those service providers to the bookmaking industry. So that sort of started Waterhouse VC, and we basically try and find businesses that are providing services. So I'm in the UK at the moment. We've just gone to a business that provides voice and text message betting service to bookmakers. So if you want to text your bet on Viber or Telegram or one of those messaging services, or you want to speak your bet, they provide the technology that does that. We're in negotiating with an esports fixed odds data supplier at the moment. Basically, they have real-time feeds from all the tournaments, and then they use their algorithms and get their large quants teams to price up these esport matches. So we really try and find businesses and products that the bookmakers need, and then most of our due diligence is around the technology of it, and the team understanding, well, how easy would it be to integrate, how easy is it to replicate, and if we like it, we make an investment, and yeah, hopefully over the long term they turn out to be great businesses and a key parts of the betting industry's ecosystem.
Yeah, and that sounds great, Tom, that you do it that way. And I guess, you're not like a typical financial grad background. So how do you then sort of, find people to then help you work within that space, to select companies and things like that? Is there a certain formula you have?
So we have a team of analysts in the business, but it's not a traditional fund in terms of understanding whether this business should be at 15 times earnings or 25 times earnings or 40 times revenue, 10 times revenue or 20 times revenue. Our business is really finding businesses that are at that earlier stage, and have they got great technology? And our sort of analysis is getting our tech team to really understand the product, and can we get in at fair value, but do they have a shot of going from a small business that doesn't provide that to the large bookmaking companies? Will they likely get into those ecosystems? Will they likely get into the likes of FanDuel, DraftKings, Caesars, MGM? And if we think that technology is a key part of it, of the ecosystem going forward, we think they've got a great shot. So it's more of an understanding of their technology rather than understanding whether their lines of the P&L are value at this present point in time. And that's sort of why we went down this path, is we think we've got a big advantage when it comes to understanding what's important and what are key products for the bookmaking industry, where we don't have really any advantage of understanding whether I don't know, sports bet are going to grow revenues 20 or 30% this next quarter or this next half or next year. That's not our area of expertise.
And so, Tom, it's really interesting you've been able to set up this fund sort of from scratch over the last couple of years. how easy has it been to, how did you go about that process of like raising a venture capital fund in terms of finding the money? And that was your previous work pretty useful in that space? Was it easy to find the backers? How did that all work out?
The family has always invested in the space, so we've always invested in the wagering and gaming space. It's the only area like that I know. I'm not wouldn't know anything about banking or mining or technology like broadly, like Googles and Facebooks and all this sort of stuff. But so we've always invested in the space, and I guess that starting out was like a lot of things was, well, look, just taking it slowly. Just first year was just very, very small in terms of, and making much smaller investments. And as you get time and build the team from compliance to the finance roles, to the like analysts, to the tech guys, it's just building it out. And as you have a bit of success and you understand more about the space, and your confidence builds, and it's these things take a long sort of time. I guess I sort of think that this first 5 years of running Waterhouse VC is a lot of learning, and I guess hopefully I never stop learning in the space. But I just thought I'd start out small and just sort of learn as I go and take my time with it. And in no rush, I'm not trying to build some massive fund. I'm just happy just focusing on these businesses that I'd be looking at anyway, and doing it through a fund vehicle.
And so what is it that you look for in the staff that you hire?
Well, they've got to be obviously very committed, very intelligent, highly driven, team players, great to work with. It's, I guess, because I've been in this industry for a long period of time now, and there were so many people in the team, both at TomWaterhouse.com and then William Hill Australia. You sort of get to know a lot of people and see what works well and who you work well with. And sort of in like 20 years, there's been people I've been working for well over 10 years of that I'm still working with today. And the others, I hopefully want to find people that are very highly skilled, don't need me to micromanage them, and know what they're doing, and we want to work together long term. It's the biggest pain when someone you love working with wants to leave or do something else, and that's, you've got to provide an environment, firstly, that they like working with you, and secondly, that you're both growing. Because if, at least for me and the people I work with, if it's still the same every day for the next 10 years, it may suit some people, but we want to be trying different things, whether it's an odds aggregator site or a tipping business or a fund, or we just want to keep growing and learning different stuff and trying stuff and doing it with people you like doing it with.
Okay. Now, while you've still got the VC fund going, Tom, you've also got TomWaterhouse.com going, and this is a lot of our listeners and viewers will kind of like know that from the services you provide on there. And I've been a user myself, Tom. I really enjoyed the 20 tips every Saturday. It's a great day's entertainment, really, with your mates. And overall, when you look at your stats on that website, you are actually up, which is a pretty good thing considering how much sort of research goes into horse racing markets these days. It's pretty efficient. So I guess just at the beginning, what was like your motivation for setting up that bet service? It's that old question. I mean, if you've got an edge, why don't you just punt it yourself?
Well, the issue is before the advertising restrictions in 2008, before the iPhone, before 3G, the bookmaking market was really, you had the pari-mutuel through the tab, and then you had the bookmakers in Darwin, but they couldn't advertise. So they were large, but they weren't huge. And then you had a large on-course presence. People weren't betting through their phones. They might call up and have a bet. But the bookmaking on-course was still very big. So in 2008, I think I was turning over 300 million a year as an on-course bookie. It's a decent sized business, and there were plenty of bookies turning over large sums. And to get on on the rails to win 300, 400,000 was not it was not a huge task 15 years ago. But then you saw the lifting of the advertising restrictions, and those bookmakers in the NT really grew their business. TomWaterhouse.com was one of them. And then you saw the overseas bookmakers come in, and the dynamics changed, and that on-course market and the mix of ability to get on if you had somewhat of an edge, and the trading of bookmaking changed, not only because of the advertiser restrictions and the shift of money off course, but also the turnover taxes. Racefields legislation came in 2007, and you saw the increase in taxes from around 1% of turnover to probably it's around 4-ish, maybe with point of consumption, maybe a little bit more now. And so that's a significant increase. So for a customer that's a line ball customer, you have to be making at least 4% margin as a bookmaker now. So the dynamics are very, very different from 15 years ago. So the ability to get on, bookies have to bet you to win 2,000 at fixed odds. Well, I had 3 or 4 bookies, but guaranteeing to win 100,000 per bet 15 years ago. So the ability to get on is greatly reduced, and I thought it was more lucrative than trying to get on to win 2,000 with each bookie. If you've got an edge and you understand about taking the top price and making sure you're staking correctly, that it was more lucrative doing it as a subscription business and having many smaller punters in a group getting tips and hopefully understanding how to win their betting and how to be a better bettor than it was trying to slog it away, trying to win 2,000 with each bookie and hoping the price holds up. And I think it's been right. You know, the customer base TomWaterhouse.com has been very sticky, and as you said, the long-term results have been very good. But it doesn't mean if you get the service, you're guaranteed winning, because you've got to stick, obviously, the staking plan. You've got to get the top price. You've got to make sure you follow the tips and not put your own ones in there. It's still a tough task. It's not some easy thing to do, you know.
And so how do you sort of handle the volatility of betting? Like, is there a certain psychology in the way that you think about betting?
Yeah, in that I don't think about if it's a win or loss. Same ways I view the stock market. The stock market's off 8% or 10% or 15%. Like, I just don't think about it, because if you believe that your strategy is right over time, and you've got to keep analyzing and understanding whether the market's changed and the factors that you can win at have changed. But if you believe long term that you're investing, whether it's in the right companies or you're investing and getting on at the right price all the time and always beating the market, well, you've got to have the bankroll to be able to withstand some serious drawdowns. And that's all about staking correctly and having the right bankroll. And if you don't have the right bankroll and you haven't staked correctly, well, obviously you're going to feel pressure. But if you have that, there should never be a sleepless night.
It's really, I honestly think this is the biggest thing. Like, you can't be, in a way, to be an investor, and it's similar to be a bettor, really. You can't be riding the waves, like, emotionally, of the ups and downs, whether it might be over one Saturday or over a week. And like Ron and I, we follow quite a few stocks, and a lot of them are in like lithium, and we had a bit of a play with uranium in that time. And uranium's, honestly, it's just up. Might be some days, you know, we're sort of very excited, aren't we, Ron? It might be up like 40% even, but then other days it's down 30%. And if you sort of just take that to heart and say, well, you know, I've got to get out now, I was all wrong, then you just can't survive long term, can you, Tom? Like, so how did you learn that? Like, how did you get that kind of mindset?
My whole family's been in bookmaking for great grandfather in the 1800s. So everything is about probability, odds, staking, never chasing your losses, like keeping a level head. If you don't have those characteristics, you're going to go broke bookmaking. You know, it's because you can be winning or losing millions of dollars in a 20-minute period. You can think you're the king of the world, and then suddenly 3 races in a row and you do a couple of $1 million. It's, if you don't have that inside you, well, you'll just chase your losses and you'll lose 10 million one day and you're out of business and gone. So I guess it was just drummed into me, and never thinking of it as gambling is if, do you have an edge to beat the market? And if you do, then you should play. And if you don't, well, then you're better off keeping your money in your pocket. And also, when you think you have an edge, you don't necessarily always have an edge. So don't make sure you stake correctly, because if you've got to keep assessing, well, do you actually have an edge here or not?
And just one more on that one, Tom, just because it's of special interest to me, but with the 20 on Saturday, the main Saturday package, is there any reason you like the idea of having, say, 20 bets over a Saturday? Is the number significant, or is it because there's other services out there where people say, oh, look, I'll just give you 1 or 2 bets a week and just pile into them? Is there, do you sort of think the diversification is a good thing, or?
Look, you're going to win a higher profit on turnover taking 1 or 2 bets. Like, if you have 1 bet a year, you're going to be very hard to beat. The bookie's going to really struggle to beat you if you go, well, I'm going to wait all year long until I see something amazing, and I'm going to take it at the top price. Well, over a 10-year period, the bookie, it's a bit like if you ask someone, give me once every 3 years your best stock pick or something. If you actually keep to a bare minimum what you're actually selecting, you're hard to beat. But the reason why it's 20 is because to win enough on the punt, if you're a serious bettor, you need turnover. You can't, if you have your 1 bet and you go, oh, well, I'm only going to bet once a year and I want to have a large bet on that 1 bet, the bookies won't let you on for enough. So if you're one of these punters that are trying to get volume up, and some of our platinum members or big bundle members, they're trying to get volume up. They're not looking for the highest profit on turnover. They're looking for actually the highest dollar number at the end of the year. Well, you need to have lots of bets to keep your turnover up and to keep. If you're looking for highest profit on turnover, taking the top 20 bets is not as good as taking the top 5 or the top 1. But it gives you volume. It gives, probably for a more recreational member, it gives them lots of bets to play throughout the day. But we believe that all 20 selections, we've got them priced shorter than what the market is showing at the time, but it doesn't mean that they're as good a selection as our number 1. You're getting our 20th best selection.
And so moving on from that, you also founded Listed Reserve, an investment firm that specializes in decentralized technologies and blockchain assets. And do you have a big belief in sort of these new digital currencies, the distribution ledge, and that blockchain is kind of the future? Is that kind of your mindset?
Look, I only know of it really in any sort of to give you any sort of decent answer in this from a gaming or gambling wagering perspective. And in 2014, we were looking for lower cost centers to build up our team. And so we went through China and Taiwan and India and the Philippines and saw a lot of operators trying to get a gauge of how these operators were operating. And we saw a lot of operators during that time, and they were turning over 10 to 15x what we were turning over. And they had only 20, 30 people in their team. And what amazed me of the size of their operation, but they were taking bets in cryptocurrency. And I thought, well, I've never heard of these operations, and they're 10, 15 times our size, and they don't have many people working with them. How are they getting this volume in cryptocurrency? So that I hadn't really spent any time understanding Bitcoin or Litecoin or Monero or any of these type of coins, but that spruiked my interest, and the CFO at the time, was very keen and had been interested in the space for at least a couple of years before that. And so that sort of started the journey, and we did a lot of work with the CFO who became the CIO of Listed Reserve, and also with Ari Klinger, who was part of the Tim Draper Network, his company at the time, and they'd done a lot with in the cryptocurrency space, and so that sort of started the journey with Listed Reserve. And I think the only other area that we spend a lot of time now with the Waterhouse VC hat on is that there's such a growth a gaming point of view, in the metaverse, like in like Decentraland, you're seeing like in the US, you're seeing the large operators growing at 100% year-on-year revenue growth. Well, in the metaverse, obviously, it's the size of the market from just from a standing point. You go, well, it couldn't be big as the US, but the growth there is off the charts. And so we look at a lot of the service providers that might provide to the US or to like these metaverses like Decentraland to try and understand what type of products are going to go in there. But I don't have a good understanding or a good enough understanding to give you a decent answer on whether, from an investment point of view, you should be investing in Ethereum or Bitcoin or any of those cryptocurrencies. My focus is I hope listed reserve and a keen part of observer of that company goes great, and it's in very good hands. I've worked with the people that run that business and know how talented and switched on they are. But for me as a individual, I just focus on the one space I know, which is wagering and gaming. So that's basically my broad knowledge of the space.
And so do you find that you kind of just follow the smartest people in that space at this stage? Because it's kind of, tricky to calculate all these things. Like I find blockchain personally, pretty confusing in terms of, what would be a good sort of crypto to bet on or purchase. Like with me and Jimmy, with our investing, we'll often look at other smart people and kind of look at what sort of companies they're picking, in that, we find that can be more effective than us trying to do all the research, which we still do.
I guess the way I view it is that for my main area that I try and make money is in areas that I actively involved in and actively managing, and in the core area that I know. And then for more passive investment is then finding areas that are not correlated to that one area that I know that are run by talented people that have a great understanding of that space that I have trust in. And listed reserve definitely falls into that category. They're great operators there, but it's I don't view it as an active part of my portfolio because I stick for active investment into just the one. I only focus on the one industry.
Okay, right, Tom. Now, what we want to do, we've done this interview in a slightly different format, and now what we're going to do is going to go back to the beginning a wee bit, if you don't mind. And so, just saying, so how did you get to, obviously you're very knowledgeable about what you're investing in, and you've got a real passion for it, which is just so obvious to see. But I guess, how did you get here? And have you come from a family? Well, I guess you definitely have come from a family of entrepreneurs and business people, dating back to your great grandfather Charles Waterhouse, since he took out his flat training license in 1898. But that entrepreneurial spirit that you've got, how do you think you got that yourself personally?
Oh, look, I think I'm the first person I know in the family that took a job. When I went around William Hill, Australia, they were like, "What are you doing?" type thing. It's just they're all, the whole family, whether it's from my mum, who's my whole life got up at 2:05 in the morning and worked all day, to my dad who gets up at 3 in the morning, to my grandfather who was in the office 7 days a week, I think, till he was 90 something. My aunt works every day of the week. My sister is a hard worker. Like the whole family just works hard. And I guess if you see that as a young kid, how hard that they're working and that their life is their work, you sort of like, well, that's just standard, and I was lucky. I was at university and my dad had said, "Do you want to come out and work a day at the races?" And it just clicked. I just loved it. The first day I went there, I went, "This is incredible. This is the excitement, the theatre." I was like, "How do I do this more?" And then when you're young and you love something, you just want to absorb as much as you can. So I just never stopped asking my dad and my grandfather questions. Worked every day at the races that I possibly could around university, and then when my dad went away, I worked for him, and then when I got a license to the dogs, and then I worked with my grandfather, and we went into partnership together, and it was amazing getting the difference in the way that my dad bookmakes, because he's such an analytical, data-driven person, where my grandfather was such a gambler, big picture. They were complete polar opposites in the way that they viewed bookmaking, learn from both of them, and then I guess success breeds success, and that's not to say I'm some ultra successful person or something, but you have a little bit of success, whether it's bookmaking or in business or something. You're like, oh well, that's great. I'm going to try some more, and then you might have a lot of failures along the way, but you want more of that success, so you just keep trying to go and it's just fun. It's a fun game, isn't it? Business. It's
I think, Tom, like, I was complaining to Ron yesterday about reading tax reports and things like that, 50-page reports. But the key is you've just got to find that thing that's fun for you, isn't it? Or you've got energy for it. And is that what you'd say you've done over your career to date? You've kind of followed the areas where you've got energy and the work comes easily. Is that sort of how for yourself and your family?
And I guess I've kept trying to do new things, but stick to where I've got where I think I've got a real advantage, and I've been really lucky to have grown up in the family that has been all around horse racing and betting and this industry, and had the experience that I had in the industry myself the last 20 years. Well, how do I capitalize on that and at the same time keep growing and changing? Because I would have loved to have been an on-course bookie the way it was in 2007, 2008 for the rest of my life. That was amazing, but you can't stand still because your surroundings and the external environment just keeps changing and keeps eating you up. So you've got to keep evolving and keep changing and keep tacking a new course, because anything that's good it's not good forever. And that's the exciting thing about evolving, trying to adapt your skill set to the new environment. And it makes it fun.
And so Jimmy has read your mum's book, and one thing that he really noted was the huge emphasis on your family background. And he said to me, it seems that your family all supports each other in your various endeavors, popping up in each other's social media posts. Is that sort of like a conscious thing? Has your sister and parents been a great support to you, the whole way through your business endeavors?
Oh yeah, 100%. Oh, they all have, but especially my dad, in that, like, I'm like, oh, do you think I could do this, or do you think this would work? And he's like, oh, if you want to do it and you're going to commit to it, of course it'll be a success. He's just ultra belief. And like, I'd been at the races 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and he went to New Zealand on a trip, and he said, oh well, look, you run my stand. And I was 18 or 19. I had no experience. You can lose hundreds of $1,000s. And he just gave me basically the keys to the business and do your best, Tom. These are a few rules you should try and stick to. Hope it goes well for you. And that belief, especially in a young kid, because you just don't know. You're like, am I great at this, or am I dunce, or am I? But when your dad believes in you, it gives you a lot of confidence. And confidence is an amazing advantage, because you dare to try, don't you? And sometimes it comes off and you're like, oh, how good is that? I can do this. And it's like a snowball after that. And so yeah, he was incredible like that. And my mum, just that work ethic, and she's just ultra straight shooter, says how it is, like just disciplinarian, like keeps you in line. Because as a young kid, you want to go off the rails wherever you can, don't you? So she was ultra like, you got to do this, and like they're good. They're very good parents.
Okay, Tom, and you're a great family man yourself, marrying Hoda back in 2011. You can tell me if I pronounce that wrong. In Italy, and you have 3 children now. There's a bit of a legendary story that she sort of was helping you out, even taking bets on the running rails back in the day. Can you just tell us a bit, maybe how you guys met? And
I'll tell you a funny story about her name. In that, so I called her Hoda, like Yoda, but with an H, for the first 10 years of us knowing each other. And I said a very good friend's name, I've been saying his name wrong, and his wife said to me, look, you're the godfather of our child, like you've been saying the name wrong. It's actually pronounced like this. And I said to her, I go, look, I'm so embarrassed, because I've been saying my good mate's name wrong for all these years. And like, she goes, oh, well, it's not as bad as calling you, I think she was my fiance or something, your fiance or whatever, her name wrong since you met her. And I go, what do you mean? It's Hoda. She goes, no, Tom, it's Hoda. And I'm like, it's what? She's like, it's Hoda. And I'm like, oh, okay. Okay. So I went home and next time I spoke to my parents, I go, look, Mum and Dad, you know how I've been calling Hoda? It's actually Hoda. And so the next time she came over for dinner or anywhere, they're like, hello, Hoda. And she's like, what? And they're like, hello. And none of them could pronounce it. She's like, look, guys, please, it's Hoda. Just call me Hoda. And so anyway, that went on for like 6 months, the family trying to say it. Anyway, I just felt like such an idiot. So yeah, call it. She calls it. Whenever she meets someone, she goes, it's Hoda, like Yoda, but with an H. So yeah, you pronounced it correctly. Or at least you pronounce it the same way as I do.
And I think so. How's having your own family kind of helped you in business? Do you think, Tom, has it been a positive for you in terms of pursuing all these entrepreneurial interests and stuff that you're up to?
Yeah, I think it's a great settling thing in your life. At least was for me, because when you're young, you want to go out all the time and go out on dates with different girls and party and go and all this stuff. And when you find the right person that you love, it's very settling, and you really going, well, what's the long-term plan for us as a couple and also for as a family? And that from a personal point of view, it's an amazing thing, but from a business point of view, it's an incredible thing, because it really gives you drive to try and achieve stuff, and you're not only doing it for yourself but your family, and having those long-term goals that it's life-changing. And then with kids, it's great. I think it's hard from a work point of view, that first 2 years. Like you got a lot less sleep, and I went from doing a lot of reading to no reading. You're just sort of trying to keep your head above water. I know with William Hill, like I was getting at the office before 7 o'clock in the morning and coming home late, and then with the kids, it's quite hard. But now kids are 8, 6, and 3. It's just a really lovely time. You know, it's great. And from a work perspective, it's the only thing that's hard is that you want to get home and you don't want to miss that family time, because it goes quickly. You know, so but no, being a dad and a husband is it's one of the joys of it is the joy of life.
And so when you were yourself much younger, you decided to go and study marketing and commerce at the University of Sydney. Was that an easy decision for you to choose?
Yeah, it was pretty easy. So I studied commerce and majored in finance and marketing. The school I went to, I reckon there were 90 boys from that year that went into the exact same degree. So I guess I must have just ticked the same box as all of them. But yeah, it was good. It was good. No, I guess the thing that is that I found studying and reading, spent a lot more time and focus on it as I've got older than at that time. Like I definitely are. I didn't fail any courses at Sydney Uni, but I definitely was more focused on getting to the races and being a bookie than I was making sure I went to every shoot. And I'd looked at university probably more at that time as a social thing and getting through it and then getting to the races, rather than I really want to learn about this. Where later in life, it's no, I actually really want to learn more about this, or I want to understand this, or I want to be able to have knowledge in this area. And that has, I think if I had that mindset of 10, 15 years later, I would have spent a lot more time studying at university. But back 20 years ago, no, it was let's get through this as quickly as possible so I can do the races every day of the week.
Yeah. So do you think you developed any of your entrepreneurial skills while you were studying? Like, was there any particular topics you chose, or do you think that was more kind of at home when you were, with mum and dad and the rest of the crew?
Look, I think so it's hard because I basically went to working full time. Like I was working the dogs Saturday night. I was working at the provincial races. I was working at the metropolitan races as a clerk for my dad. And it was and bookmaking's not some like 9 to 5, 7 days a week. It's you're in there like Wednesdays, Thursdays, maybe Thursday night, Friday, and a Saturday, or maybe a Sunday meeting, but you have Monday, Tuesday nearly always off. And so it's not like I'm slogging away 80-hour week sort of thing, but it's but I guess what a university is that surrounding yourself with very smart people and making sure that I guess I tried to make sure that I was around smart people that could, in the areas I found difficult, like some people grow up when I was doing the finance part of the degree, they grow up with their dads that run funds or stockbrokers, and their area, they go, oh, well, I understand. It's like if you ask me stuff about the racetrack, I've grown up hearing everything about my parents talking about racing and stuff. And so I think that area is, if you don't know something, try and find the smartest person you do. And it's not all about, to be a success, you don't go alone. You need to go with a group of people that are highly skilled and complement you in different areas. And I definitely found that at university, because there were some bits that I was like in econometrics or something, I was like, what are they talking about when I first got there? But you need to find people that just it's second nature to them, and they can explain it to you like you're a 5-year-old. It's and that definitely started that journey, I think, there, and that's been very helpful in business, because you've got to find the right people that complement you.
Yeah, and so Tom, basically what happened is you took that decision, you got into the bookmaking, and you turned that business that you'd created in university into tomwaterhouse.com, and then over the next 10 years.
Yeah, so sort of. So I was as a bookie at university, then I went into partnership with my grandfather, and we went from being smallest bookies there in the interstate to holding more money than all the other bookies combined on the rails in Melbourne. So the race fields came in. I then Sydney. My grandfather stayed in Sydney, and I went down as under my own license in Victoria, and worked in Victoria for the next 4 years or so. But during that time down there, the advertising restrictions got lifted, and we pivoted to online and started tomwaterhouse.com in about 2009. And that went from 100 customers to 250,000 customers in 18 months. It just really, it really took off in terms of customer numbers. But then the external environment changed again. All of these overseas operators came in, and the advertising costs went through the roof, and also the technology costs. So it wasn't unusual for these. We were spending sub $1 million on tech in 2008, 2009. Well, for these companies to be spending now 30, 50, $80 million on technology is not out of the realms. And so we needed to ramp up to keep up and keep scale and keep up with the increasing taxes and competition. And then we sold to William Hill in 2013.
So it must obviously, it's probably a great feather in your cap to have grown a business from something so small, created it yourself in Melbourne, through to actually selling it to a massive corporate. Now, Tom, we've got to keep we've got to challenge you here, Tom, and so I think we've got, obviously Ron's a little bit younger than myself. He's just coming out of uni here in Melbourne, and I think we'd be keen to talk about like the social license to operate for horse racing a little bit, and how do you sort of see those issues? Because there is like a little bit of a growing concern, isn't there, amongst some younger people about animal welfare and things like that. So how do you sort of see it?
Well, I sort of see it through listening to my mum talk about it, and my own experience with riding and having horses growing up is that like they just love the horses, like it's whether like my pony growing up used to follow me into, I didn't need a lead. It would follow me to the bathroom, it would follow me like down the street. And these horses are loved and amazingly taken care of. And their thoroughbred is a group of horses, unlike many other breeds of horses that have either become extinct or basically gone to very, very small numbers. They're a group of a breed of horses that have flourished. And so I see it through those glasses, because I hear the passion that my mum has for these horses and the care she takes for them, and the way she describes is how much they enjoy that competition of basically going out there and racing, and how well taken care of they are in boxes and out in the paddocks, and I see like the amazing farms that they're on. So it's, and that again, from the other side, that might be, oh, well, look, you've got a completely distorted colored view, but that's how I've grown up, and that's how I've been around horses. So I don't, it's one view, but it's really colored my thinking to going, well, these people obviously aren't around horses that much, or aren't around these horses, or aren't part of this industry. But it's, but yeah, I agree with you. It's definitely a growing sentiment in the community than when I was an on-course bookie 10, 15 or 15 years ago. It's, you never really hear about it, but you see those protests when it comes to the big races there. It's definitely become a louder voice.
Yeah, because like, what are your thoughts on like the post-racing life of a lot of horses? Because a lot of them, they do obviously get treated really well with like medical like checks and stuff for the racing, and obviously like in the big races there's heaps of teams around the horses and things like that.
Yeah.
But you know, there's a lot of lower division horses that race and things like that, and for a lot of the owners and stuff, it can be unfortunately quite expensive in a way to kind of, you know, keep the horses, and unfortunately they often aren't kept. What are sort of your thoughts on that? Do you think there should be more sort of rules around that, or?
Look, I'm not across in terms of what the actual current rules are. And the thing that has impressed me about the industry is that they've really ramped up in terms of, and made it, no, this has to happen, is that there has to be aftercare of the horses. So, and this is only me reading about what Racing New South Wales has done, and really put it at the forefront. Well, no, you can put all this money into horses and prize money to make sure they've got a great life during racing. But if we're going to be long-term guardians of this industry, we need to make sure that they're not just the most amazing pets and most amazing animals and all this sort of stuff while they're racing and making money. They've got a lifetime of that. And I don't know what the current rule is from a national perspective. I've only just seen how a lot of these racing boards have got on the front foot and made it the focus, you know, but yeah, so I don't know what the current up to date like, not rule or policy is, but I definitely know it's become a real focus that the industry has taken on. I think especially over this last 5 years, like, definitely hear a lot more about it than I did 15, 20 years ago, you know.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like, I think it's good that there's more awareness of it now, and hopefully, you know, people can hopefully see horses more as pets, like your mum and a lot of great lovers of the industry. Because I mean, I feel like there's a few people that see it more as an investment. But yeah. So regards to your VC funds, which invest in wagering and gambling products, what are your thoughts on like problem gambling and things like that?
We don't invest in any of the operators. We don't focus on the operators. You know, we focus on the service providers. But I think that putting my operator hat on from back when I was running it is, again, a little bit like the horse welfare issue. Is you can't have a license to operate now if you don't basically make sure you've got all the measures in place from a like gambling responsibly, protecting people, knowing when if your members are showing signs that they're betting irregularly, what money sourced from, and is the solution that they've got in place perfect today? I don't know. I assume it's not, but it's definitely evolved from where it was 20 years ago, you know, and it's, the pressure is coming. What I find is interesting is that the pressure is coming not just from the regulator's point of view, which has exerted a lot of pressure over the last 10 years, but it's actually coming from the operator's point of view, because they're like, well, look, if we want to be in this business long term and we want this to be regulated and we want to have a license to operate, well, it's no good coming and being late to the party and doing this once we're told or slapped on the wrist. Well, we need to get on the front foot and actually basically be doing more than what the regulator's asking. And the area that's happened far quicker than I thought is actually in the US. And I think it's motivated all the operators globally to do it, is that they haven't gone, well, let's wait 3 years for us to get regulated about these harm minimization issues. They've actually gone, well, actually, let's get groups together. Let's agree what we're going to principles. Let's make sure that we've got these harm measures in place. So I think on both those issues you mentioned, is it's not perfect, but I think there's definitely a focus and a drive from both sides of industry to really focus to improve.
Okay, Tom. Now, I like those responses. I'm a big believer in the industry, and I think I really like the way you're saying that. It's really just about we've got to improve, and we've got to kind of just get, we've got to really get that social license to operate for a younger audience, so we can keep enjoying it into the future. That's what I'm about. Now, Tom, we've so like in terms of your entrepreneurial spirit and you're running all these businesses, you've got so much going on. Is there any sort of life hacks or something that you could recommend to the listeners in terms of how you sort of operate at such a high level and stay across sort of different industries and different opportunities in these industries? How do you stay sharp?
I try not to waste time, which is hard. You can get caught in like, go, oh, well, I'll just breeze through TikTok for like an hour. I try and avoid all that sort of stuff if I can. I try and read as much as possible. I try and make sure that like I'm thinking about not only where I want to go, but hopefully the people I can go on that journey with, and that it's, I think it's really hard to achieve your goals if you want to go alone. You've got to be with the right group of people and basically go on a journey with people you love working with that are highly skilled. And yeah, I don't know if I have, like, I'm not like some ultra, like I'm not some.
Yeah,
like,
Jimmy wasn't sure if you did like yoga
guy
in the morning or
no,
like meditation.
I just like working and give it a go. Have a crack at it. I'm not some. I don't view myself as some business guru or something. I'm just like, I like working and like the industry, and that's it.
And so the last question that we like to ask our guest, Tom, is, we're here at the Arm, we're all about supporting support for mental health and mental wellbeing. And so we just wanted to ask you, is there any charities that you want to shout out in this episode? And we'll put it in the link below.
Well, I think it's sort of, I don't know if this is selfish or something, but you sort of want to go to the charities that you think that you're like, I don't know, is important for your part of your life. And so all of our like charity that we're supported is around like kids, Sydney Children's Hospital, these type of things. And I don't know if that's selfish or it's just the time you think, or it's the stuff that comes up in front of us because of this time. But I have to say, my wife is a lot more like focused in that area than I am. I know that sounds so bad, but I just I love being supporting it. And when she goes, oh, what about this? Or what about we do this? Or then I'm very supportive of it, but I'm not. It's not naturally the first thing that goes into my mind. Oh, well, I've woken up this morning. I'm going to go and. I'm not some saint that goes, oh, I'm going to go and help this charity. Actually, first thing that I think about is, oh, what am I doing for work today? And I know that's, and hopefully that evolves over time. But it's the focus is charity, and also my my wife, she's really like she's way more into it than me. Like she's on top of all that stuff.
Well, Tom, thanks so much for joining us today here on the R&J Yarn. We've really appreciated your time this morning.
Thanks so much. Yeah, thanks, Ron. Thanks, Jimmy.
Thanks, Tom. Much appreciated. Well, Ron, that was just really inspirational chat, I thought. I took a lot out from Tom in terms of just the example he sets in terms of just being really passionate about something, being focused, and really kind of pursuing it. I think that was probably the first thing that I sort of took out of it, was just sort of work out kind of what it is you want to do from a work sense, and just commit to it 100% and be passionate about it, and you're very likely to be successful. And I think a good example of that actually was when, remember, we asked him some questions about crypto and stuff, and he sort of said, well, that's not really my area of expertise,
Because every time something sort of ended in terms of him selling his online betting website and things like that, he could have gone on and tried to do other things outside his kind of expertise, which he sort of did. But at the end of the day, he made sure he stuck to what he sort of knew in a way, and kind of found other ways to use what resources and the sort of knowledge he had to then develop other things. Like, he's now got the fund, and that just focus on kind of the industry that he's been working in his whole life.
I think it's such a clever thing he's done. Like, so he had the bookmaking business, and for reasons of like competition, and sort of he's got non-compete clauses, so he can't do that. But what he was saying was, well, who knows, like, which is going to be the winner in terms of Sportsbet or TAB or Top Sport or whatever, right? But what he does know is that all of those companies are going to need these services, which, and I think he mentioned it in the show, around like new services like voice betting, text betting, all these sort of things. So it's so clever, isn't it? He kind of knows the industry, and he's just finding new ways to kind of find
leverage off it. Yeah, absolutely. And so then we also asked him some tough questions on animal welfare, which I think is good. I think if we're going to be talking about that industry, it's important that we kind of look at all sides of it. But I think the thing with me with animal welfare is I kind of think about like the Olympics, and I think if someone was in a running race and they like tore a hamstring or something, it was kind of like career-ending sort of injury. You don't just put the person down. Whereas in horse racing, if there's kind of like a career-ending injury, it comes into question the financials of kind of keeping that horse in your, like, looking after it and stuff like that. I think there's a different sort of look to it, and I just think animals are kind of have a different level of value to other species. But like, I think what I did like though is he did sort of agree with that. He did say that people, like, there should be more regulations and things, like it needs to be reviewed in a way. So I thought it was all pretty positive, and all that.
Yeah, like, it's an interesting one, isn't it? It's just not the sort of issue. It's funny how, like, society's changed, isn't it, Ron? Like, it's not the sort of thing that was thought about heaps, even 10, 50, 50 years ago. And it's, I think it's, I think the way I look at it is, it's so important that horse racing and, there's other sort of things you could say the same, but it's so important that they kind of address it, because they've got to be attracting young people into the industry, young good people in the industry like yourself, Ron, and so so they can't just leave it can't be not relevant to young people. So I think Tom definitely took the question really seriously, and I think I know, like, give some credit to, say, Racing Victoria for the Melbourne Cup this year. One of the things they brought in was every horse that comes that wants to run in the Melbourne Cup has to get vetted by an independent vet, by a Racing Victoria vet, just to make sure it's actually up for that race.
But I don't think there's ever been much doubt in terms of like that. Maybe there is some misinformation. People say that horses always hate racing and stuff. That there probably is some horses that don't enjoy being a racehorse. But I think there's great sort of management of horses prior to racing. The more sort of things should be more kind of like sanctuaries and things for horses in the post-racing life. When they're no longer an asset and they're a liability, that's kind of when I think there needs to be more kind of spotlight on that sort of area. And I think it's just going to be really challenging for horse racing, if I'm completely honest. I'm not sure how long it will kind of be around. Because I think, Tom even talked about investing in esports and things like that now. It might be something that is still around, but I think like all these small sort of race courses will sort of phase out over time, and there might just be like the Melbourne Cup, and it won't be as huge a deal. But I could be wrong.
Yeah. I think there's one great organisation that we'll give a little shout out to in this regard called Living Legends, which is out near Melbourne Airport, and that's where you'll find like past Melbourne Cup winning horses, and that was set up by Racing Victoria exactly for that purpose, to house retired racehorses. But I think the point you made a little bit was that what about all the horses that don't get that far? You know what I mean? And I think that is a real issue. And maybe there's maybe there's too many. Maybe we are overbreeding a wee bit, because maybe we've got to get it down to a sustainable level where all the horses they can be rehomed afterwards. But it is a bit of a tricky issue, and it might be one we explore.
Easy solution. Just watch something else. But I mean, anyway.
Okay, so another aspect that we touched on was around basically his philosophy on betting, and a lot of people, I think a lot of listeners, Ron, would have been interested in kind of getting some tips off Tom in terms of how he goes about selecting winners and that. And I thought one of the key takeouts he had was around a lot of people, when they like something, whether it be a horse or it might be a tennis player or it might be a AFL team on a Saturday afternoon, and then they see, wow, they're paying big odds, what they actually do is reduce their stake. And he was saying that that's a really big mistake, because you've really got to be very methodical about saying, well, what's your conviction level, and then regardless of what that stake is, you've got to put the bet on at that level, and not sort of lose your nerve a wee bit. And in a way, I think that sort of trading mindset, investing mindset, doesn't only apply to sports betting, or it actually applies to investing and things like that as well, Ron. Like, not kind of
like if you look at our investing, and when we talk to Sergio a comes back to let your winners run, and then you cut your losers short. So like if you pick something and after a year or whatever it's dropped 10%, you might start selling it off. Whereas if you've then put a little bit of money maybe in like a smaller cap stock, and that's been going really well, then you should be upping your stake and you should be having more in that, and making a bigger play on it. And that's kind of what he was saying, like the ones that have higher odds, let them run a bit. Yeah. So it's all kind of ties into it, doesn't it?
It is.
Similar way of thinking.
And it's just about having that really kind of disciplined mindset, like so.
And he got that from his family, didn't he?
He did.
Yeah, like I loved how he said, his family were all big supporters of each other, gave each other a lot of confidence, and like obviously his dad and stuff, they're kind of obsessive in a way in how determined they are to do well, with all the stuff that happened there. But
yeah, I think he said that when he was growing up, his mum got up at, I think it might have been 2:30 in the morning. His
I
dad.
think his dad got up at like 4 and the mum got up at 5 or something.
Yeah, but they're both getting up really early, and you just seen that work ethic, and that's obviously flowed on to him. And one last thing I'll say about that, Ron, was I love the comment. He made a comment about his dad. His dad said to him, I think early on in his career, his dad said, well look, Tom, if that's what you want to do and you're going to commit to it, then of course it'll be a success. And I thought that was a really, really powerful message that he got.
Absolutely. And I just want to shout out the charity that Tom chose, Sydney Children's Hospital. Doing great things over there, and make sure you check it out. We'll put it in the description below. So who do we have next week, Jimmy?
Well, next week it's going to be good. We're back to Melbourne. In fact, we're down in Caulfield, and we're going to go to a cafe, and it's a really special cafe. It's not just about the coffee, Ron. It's a cafe that gives employment opportunities to people with a disability, and there's a really fascinating backstory to this, and make sure you tune in.
Absolutely. It was a great chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
See you next week.
Thanks, guys. Make sure check it out for stuff.